It's Saturday. Guess what we need to do? Can you take a guess? Rhymes with bleeding.
I'm not doing any. I cleaned all week. I'm putting my foot down. I'm not doing
Tired of it. Hey, what's up, everyone? Wanted to share another thing that I've gotten into lately since we've been in quarantine or coronavirus pandemic and whatnot. Using this flour down there and making some homemade bread. You see, it's a lot simpler than I thought it was, and it's kind of fun. Here we go.
But first off, disclaimer, we live in a tiny one-bedroom apartment and it's super hard for us to film videos like this because we don't have a lot of space to cook with. So bear with us. We're gonna try our best. So where did you find this recipe, Cisco?
The internet.
The internet, aka where we find all of our recipes. But many of you know, I started eating vegan after our wedding about a year ago. So we have a little bit of butter, Earth Balance, it's a vegan option. We have some yeast. We don't typically buy this yeast. We like the instant yeast packets, but when the pandemic hit, everything flew off the shelves, especially baking wise. So we found this and we stocked up on it. It works. Our measuring cup, measuring, some basic salt, some flaxseed. We have our all-purpose flour in here and our bowls. Let's get started.
A full disclaimer before we start, I do measure stuff, but I think sometimes, just like life, you gotta figure it out along the way. You know, you'll see what works for you. Your oven's gonna be different. I know measurements can all be the same, but just play around with what works for you, what preference you like, and you'll find out how you like it. We'll figure it out. So first things first, get 2 cups of water. Then put this in the microwave for about a minute-ish. I think now is a good time. If you don't have your ingredients out already, bring them out. Another thing that's kind of fun to add is any kind of seeds if you have. So like sunflower seeds or pumpkin seeds we've had it added sometimes, raisins. Really up to you. So I microwaved for about a minute. It actually got a little too hot right now. So I'm sure there is a formula online or some information about the perfect temperature for yeast. I don't know it. But I mean, this water is steaming. It's too hot for me to hold my finger in there, so I'm gonna let it cool down for a bit. Basically, you want it, I say a little more than lukewarm, and then add your yeast. Water cooled down a bit. It's not steaming anymore, which is nice. So I'm gonna grab my yeast, about half a teaspoon this is. And before I pour it, actually, I want to get the wooden spoon that I'm gonna use later. And just kind of mix it in. So while the yeast is doing its thing, we're going to portion out our flour. The mix of actually white flour and whole wheat flour. Another story for another time of why that got mixed. So I'm right under 3 cups, I'm sure you can see there. Gonna mix in some flaxseed as well. No, we have this other flour. I'm ballparking it. Okay, play with this ratio as you like it. I'm gonna say about a teaspoon of salt. While that's doing its thing, check on your yeast. It should look something like that. You might see some bubbles. I like to give it a quick stir. And then in goes the butter. Get that going, and then immediately after, just mix it. You can mix it in beforehand. I didn't, and it's not gonna be the end of the world, right? We're just gonna slowly mix this in. So I have actually added all of the flour, right? And as you can see, we're still at this kind of texture. This is where you gotta feel it. You gotta ballpark it and just kind of go with your gut. And you know, you're gonna mess up the first, I don't know, 5 or 6 times, but you'll figure it out. I'm not perfect, but I'm just gonna dump in the flour and I'm actually gonna start getting into this with my hand. You saw the dough was, or the flour was kind of forming into a ball. Once you get to that texture, it's time to go all hands in. If you have a stand mixer or a hand mixer with a dough hook, now's the time to go for it. We do not, like I said. So I'm gonna be getting into this by hand for about 10 minutes needed. Might even pass it off to my wife. Yeah, so just add flour as you go along. Again, you don't want sticky hands. That's not a good joke. So we'll be back. It's been about 10 minutes of kneading, and check out what we got now. And I know I said keep one hand clean, but at this point, I mean, you should be able to do this. I did, full disclosure, have to like scrape my fingers and then put it back in the dough. But even then now, I mean, put a little bit in the bowl, eyeball it, drop it in there, give it a swirly swirl, flip it around, a swirly swirl. Regular towel, nothing fancy, just throw it in here, about a minute. We just need it warm. Off the warm, drop it around. I'm gonna put it back in the microwave. Let it rest for 90 minutes. So I pulled it out of the microwave. It's been in there for 90 minutes, give or take about 10 minutes. Do this reveal here. Voila. So as you see, it has almost doubled in size. It's insane, right? It's a lot of air though, so as soon as I go, it'll shrink down. So with the parchment paper, one thing I like, instead of saran wrap, I take it off, throw it away, it's done now. With parchment paper, I can reuse this. I'll put it in the loaf pan. It goes down, and then when it's done baking, it pops right out, right? And then I'll actually reuse that again for the other pan, because realistically, this is gonna be way more once I crunch it down to fit in just one loaf. You don't wanna do that. It'll blow up. I've done it. It's just not good bread, unfortunately. And this is all full of air, so let's press it. It's the fun part. And I'm going to portion off about yay much. This will be for the bread. This is for just the extra loaf that we get, right? So kind of form it in a way. It's funny, I didn't really think it mattered how this bottom looks, but once it bakes out, you'll see creases inside of your bread. It's about yay big. I'm gonna drop it right in there. You know, try to shape it. I stretch it a little more to the pan, right? And then with this one, I didn't get too much parchment paper out of this one, so I'm gonna try to make it work with just a really long piece of bread, kind of like a baguette. Obviously, it's nowhere near as fancy. This bread's gonna do a second rise for about an hour to 45 minutes. 45 minutes, okay? After that, take that loaf out of the oven and turn the oven on. I do 350. I've seen people do it with 400. Play with that. Again, it's your bread. Timer just went off. As promised, I'm going to turn the oven on to 350. Let's see how much this one is. Check it out. So that'll be a nice loaf. So gonna let the oven preheat for 15 minutes. This one will go in first, followed by the sub. So if you hear this little, so it's pretty hard. Let's see what the temperature comes out to. We're getting up to 190, yeah? So another thing I'll say, we just pulled it out. It is super tempting to just tear into this loaf right now. However, I found that it's better for slicing if you just leave it to rest for a few hours. However, the loaf that's in the oven, we will try that one as soon as it's done. Yeah, we'll probably snack on this here pretty soon as it cools down, like cool enough to touch and handle. And yeah, thanks for joining us this time. Like I said, you'll see there at the bottom some of the like turns and wrinkles that I was doing. Kneading it, they actually come out in the dough. So, I mean, there's even some in there. If you have any questions or any ideas or bread recipes that you want to share, definitely let us know in the comments below. I let it cool a few minutes. I ripped a piece open and it is steaming. You can't tell from this video quality, but it is nice and fluffy. It's good. It's still kind of got a nice crunchy on the outside, crunchy feel, but the inside is nice. It's fully cooked. Yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. I will now show you how to cut a mango.